Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply. It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a show today about food, dog food and human food. Go figure. During the first hour, we'll be joined by Patrick Wardell from Visionary Pet Food to talk about low carbohydrate diets for dogs. You know, it's fascinating to me that right now, dogs get cancer at the same rate as humans. And the number one thing that kills Labrador retrievers and golden retrievers is cancer. And we have learned a lot about human cancer thanks to people like Dr. Thomas Seyfried and the role of glucose, mitochondrial dysfunction. But yet we ignore it when it comes to our favorite pets, our dogs. I did a show recently about Big Kibble. And during that show, I offered to the veterinarian and the other author of the book that low carb may be a good thing for dogs. And they discounted it and said, no, domesticated dogs need carbohydrates and you can't compare them to their ancestor, the wolf, or even wild dogs. And I knew their statement was inherently incorrect, but this isn't a show where I challenge and bash people. It's a show where I let the information get out there and my intelligent audience gets to choose what they think is right or not, because we are all critical thinkers. We're not tribalists. We're critical thinkers. We think for ourselves. But I knew I had to do this show to clear up some things. So that'll be the first part of the show. The second part of the show will be, what if raising cattle could actually be better for the planet than growing produce and fruits? I don't mean better for the planet like, oh, well, you know, CO2 and the cow chews and poops. And what if actually, aside from all of those techniques to offset, what if there is a way to raise cattle and produce cattle that actually improved, that took away from the carbon footprint from the greenhouse gases? It really exists. And Will Harris is going to be on later to tell us about it. And the good news is the beef is better tasting, higher quality, and doesn't cost any more. But before we get into all of that, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods, the makers of the Tasty Pastry. The new cake-style Tasty Pastry is unbelievable. I promise you, I'm getting emails from people saying I can't stop eating these things, and it's the truth. Red velvet cake, cinnamon. There's actually cookies and cream where the outside of the Tasty Pastry looks and tastes like the cookie part of an Oreo cookie. And here's the best part. Less than 1 gram of sugar and 20 grams of high-quality, high-leucine protein. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off all of the great products at Legendary Foods. The seasoned almonds, of course, the nut butters are unbelievable. Again, no sugar in the nut butters, but they taste like dessert. If you want to feel like you're cheating but not be cheating, be sure to go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use SHR10, the code. Now, if you like to play a game of chance, during the commercial breaks, there will be a secret word. When you hear the secret word, email it and your mailing address to onair@superhumanradio.net, and there's a good chance that you will get a free box of tasty pastry. Ron Penna has been so generous to my audience with this promotion. So take advantage of it, because I'll tell you something. I have emails and messages on Facebook from people who say they got their box of tasty pastries. They love them so much, they can't wait to order more. And that could be you if you pay attention to the commercial break today. Okay, now I'm going to bring my guest, and he is Patrick Wardell.
Hey, Carl, how you doing?
Good, Patrick. How are you? Patrick, I don't even know your title at Legendary, at the Visionary Pets. I'm sorry.
You know, I've never even had a title. I was the first one there, aside from the founders, and I've just kind of done a lot for the last few years, and it's been an honor.
Now, right now, people are looking at you going, wait a minute, that's the amazing dog guy from TikTok and from Instagram.
Yeah, you may know my my TikTok or IG videos where I do amazing dog facts. So I post one every day, and that's just like a lighthearted way to kind of introduce people to the brand. Like, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword when you have a product that's actually meaningful and actually fun and interesting to talk about. Most people, like, it really is a luxury, and when I say an honor, it's like a privilege to work for a company like this, because you get to talk about things that are actually meaningful and interesting, right? Most brands have to lean on the same kind of tired platitudes, like high quality, the best ingredients, you know what I mean? But when you have like a real, actual, existentially important mission, I would say, for dogs and canine nutrition, like it's just fun and such a privilege to talk about it. So I appreciate you having me.
In the interview where we talked about kibble, which kibble is garbage, it really is garbage for so many reasons. And we've known about this for a long, long time, but your veterinarian is still going to tell you that most likely your veterinarian is going to still tell you that your dog should be eating kibble. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who just bought a service dog that was trained for the military to protect their family. Mm-hmm. And they were told by the handler that sold them the dog, nothing but kibble. And I actually sent her the last show, and she's like, well, I need to rethink this now. Because when you love your animal, they become part of your family. And would you knowingly feed them something that's going to shorten their lives and make them sick sooner? Of course not. You wouldn't do that to your children. You wouldn't do it to your dog. But people are doing it unwittingly because there's a lot of confusion. So
yeah. It really is the equivalent of going to the store, buying a lifetime supply of Captain Crunch and eating that once or two times a day for the rest of your life. Like, the fun thing here is the story can be as complex as you want it to be, and we can go as deep as you want in terms of scientific rationale.
Yeah, because my people like science.
Awesome. But the top line story is like very simple. You know what I mean? Like it really does scale in terms of complexity, because the top line story is this: carbs are in dog food because it's easy to manufacture dog food with carbs. No one's ever done it in a different way until we started down that journey a couple of years ago, trying to make a low carb dry food, right? Dogs don't need carbs. So it's a very simple story. Dogs don't need carbs. Most dog foods are full of carbs. Buy the low carb dog food, or make one at home.
And the dogs so my sister had a schnauzer named Duffy.
I love schnauzers.
He was full-blown diabetic. She had to give him insulin every day. No one ever said to her, oh, we need to get the carbs out of his diet. He won't need insulin anymore.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So I want to start here. The genesis of Visionary Pet Food evolved from the Kettle Pet Sanctuary. And what Kettle Pet did, and Ron and Shannon Penna made a mission of, was they solicited veterinarians who were about to euthanize dogs on behalf of the owner because they had been diagnosed with irreversible forms of cancer. Mm-hmm. And I remember how it went because I was present for some of the discussions. We'll take good care of your dog, all the best services. and when the dog dies, we'll take good care of the burial or whatever. Like it was it was almost like if someone came to you in hospice and said, "We think we can save your father, but like he's dying anyway. Can we take? We'll treat him so good. We'll give him good food. We'll treat him like gold." And you go, "Yeah, okay. What could go wrong? Maybe he'd live longer." And some ridiculous number of dogs who were supposed to be euthanized lived. And they lived for long periods of time. They didn't just live for a week or two. They lived for years beyond their expiration date.
Yeah, I'll tell you
Go ahead.
The amazing numbers there. Okay, so Keto Pet is one of those sort of rare miraculous projects that only exists because Ron exists in the world and has the money to throw towards incredibly interesting ventures instead of money-making things like most people with resources do, right? So Keto Pet was millions of dollars, purely to help dogs and answer important questions about canine nutrition, right? In regards to the stats you mentioned, there are some pretty ridiculous stats. So the longest prognosis of any dog that was accepted into Keto Pet was 6 weeks. So that was the longest anyone said one of the dogs was going to live. This was back in 2014. So we're in 2021 and still I'm waiting for the stat to change, but over half the dogs are still alive at this point. So, and just for a little guidance on what it was, there was just like you said, we would take dogs from kill shelters that had terminal diagnoses. They were going to get put down anyway because they had advanced stage cancer, and they were shelter dogs. So there was no one really to put the money in to give them standard of care or anything like that. We would adopt them. We had a sanctuary in Georgetown, Texas. We had a PET scanner, which is the gold standard of cancer imaging in humans. And the rationale was this: we'll give them standard of care, but we'll also put all of them on a ketogenic diet, on a very low carb ketogenic diet, with the idea that the way cancer metabolism works is cancer cells do something very, very weird and wasteful, in my opinion, totally inefficient, which is they rapidly ferment glucose for fuel. So with one molecule of glucose, they create 2 molecules of ATP, which is your standard energy unit for a cell, right? Whereas normal cells create 32 molecules of ATP, right? So those cancer cells need a ton of glucose. And when you eat a ketogenic diet, you can exist healthy and optimal with very low values of glucose. I wish I had a graph, but there's a really cool graph we have that shows average blood glucose. So we would measure blood glucose. You can validate your diet is being implemented successfully doing that. And we found that dogs on a ketogenic diet had blood glucose around 62 nanograms per milliliter, where dogs fed a standard kibble diet were in the high 90s on average. So that's a 50% delta increase from the ketogenic diet baseline value. And all that is fuel that the tumor can't use. So in my opinion, and based on every study, I mean, it's pretty clear that a ketogenic diet should be at least an adjuvant therapy in most cancers. There are a few cancers that can metabolize ketones, so maybe not those, but that still needs to be examined a bit more. But that's what we expected to kind of discover, is a ketogenic diet can be really effective. It was way more effective than we thought it would be. And the other cool thing, which kind of leads into the visionary part of the equation, is, dogs don't have a nutritional need for carbs. And we found when we put these dogs on low carb ketogenic diets, not only did we see benefits with the cancer aspect, but we'd also see hot spots clearing up, itchiness, allergies clearing up, energy, endurance, kennel anxiety, like legitimately every issue that would plague a dog, we would see improvements with, dog to dog, depending on their plate of issues. And that's where we really started thinking about dogs as a whole.
So what you're really saying is that dogs not only get cancer at the same rate as their owners, but they also get autoimmune disorders, hot spots, anxiety, So, and we know that the only carbohydrate sources are things that grow out of the ground. Like, I know that people probably know that in their head, but when you stop and think, wait a minute, if carbohydrates in some people and in some dogs cause really horrible autoimmune type symptoms, and the only carbohydrates there are no animal forms of carbohydrate except the modest amount of glycogen in muscle tissue that causes the Maillard effect when you cook something. It makes it brown. Sure. There is no animal carbohydrates. There are only plant-based carbohydrates, which makes you start to think to yourself, maybe all this plant eating that we're supposed to be doing isn't really that good for some of us. And I don't want to say all of us, because whenever you talk in absolutes like that, you absolutely get shot down. But maybe some of us really don't need plants, and some of our dogs don't need corn. I had a meme on my website, and it said, no, it had a picture of a wolf's face, and it said, "No farmer ever stepped out his back porch and said, 'Those damn dogs ate all my corn again.'"
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and it's true. And so, what would you say to the guys who are saying, "No, dogs, domesticated dogs need carbohydrates. They are nothing like their wolf ancestors"?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the burden of proof is on them. There's no evidence that dogs require carbohydrates to function, and in fact, there's lots of evidence that would indicate that a low carb diet is optimal. Um, and this comes from sort of the top authorities as well. I mean, this is known to be true, right? There's no nutritional requirement for a dog to eat carbs. And there's no sort of evidence or mechanism of action that you can say, here's why a dog needs to eat carbs. And you can validate this very easily. If you look at a dog food package, carbs are not listed. Like it's the only macro that isn't listed, right? Fat and protein are required because you have to meet certain amounts. Carbs are this mysterious number that everybody's hiding and no one's talking about. But it ends up being, 30% plus at least of the food in terms of, percent macro by calories for most of these dog food brands, which is pretty scary to think about.
And when they make kibble, they heat it to an extremely high rate in order to remove all the moisture and make it shelf stable. Well, that is where advanced glycation end products occur because of the carbohydrates that are in kibble, right?
Yeah, there's issues there. There's also issues with the fats being heated to a high degree. I mean, one thing we were talking about before the show started, which I think is a really interesting point, because we have a higher fat food, right? So sometimes people ask us about pancreatitis, but from everything we've looked at, and we haven't had a single person reach out to us and say they've had pancreatitis on this supposedly dangerous high fat food, right? We've had people with pancreatitis come to us because they got it from their old food and they were interested in switching, right? So it's interesting that we have that situation. And I think it's due to the fact that pancreatitis, I think the evidence suggests that it could be related to fat content, but I think it's mostly related to damaged fats, so peroxidized fats. And those are really the result of mono or polyunsaturated fats being exposed to a high heat source. So our food's made at 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which is relatively low. It's closer to the freeze drying temperature, actually, which is considered a raw product in many circles. But I wouldn't consider it a raw product. It is a kill step. It's a heat step. But the cool thing we do is we add a lot of the mono and polyunsaturated fats after the heat step. Right. And that's, like, I think one of the smarter things we do in the process.
So you do have a kibble, which is, and I didn't want to talk about this when I had the other show because it's confusing. Wait, Carl, you're saying kibble's bad, but Visionary Pets kibble is good? Like, come on. And so talk about this a little bit at length. Why did you even bother producing a kibble? Is it just because some people prefer it's easier to handle? And
yeah, the evolution was interesting. So we had Keto Pet, and then we had, this is important, everybody needs to feed this diet for their dog. Let's make a calculator. And there's an online calculator. It still exists today if people want to check it out. It's on ketopetsanctuary.com. And they can go on there, they can select the ingredients, select the weight of their dog, the activity level. It's super easy, and it just spits out a diet you can make with grocery store ingredients. That's all well and good, but we live in a world where people don't have the time and energy. It takes a lot to make the food at home and to do it, year after year, day after day. So we would get emails constantly through Keto Pet, which is basically, what can I buy? What can I buy? And we didn't have anything to point people to. I mean, you could kind of do something with treats from a pet store and homemade ingredients like single source protein treats, but that ends up being even more complicated. So we originally just took the Keto Pet diet and turned it into freeze dried food. And then we took that and turned it into frozen food, which was a little more affordable. Freeze dried and frozen food are great, but it's expensive to make, and thus it's expensive to purchase. So for small dogs, it works great. But for people with Bernese Mountain Dogs or, Mastiffs or something, it's either, pay your mortgage or feed your dog the best diet, right? So we wanted to create something that, legitimately everyone could afford and use. It's easy for people that are new to this and don't want to deal with sort of the bloods from raw foods and stuff like that. It was a real challenge. This had never been created before. You could go to any dog food manufacturer in the US right now and you could say, I want to make a a kibble with 30% carbs or something, and they can do it the next day, no problem. Just tell them the ingredients, they can do it. It's not an issue. But if you go and you tell them, I want to make a kibble that's less than 1% carbs by calories, it's going to take you, it took us 2 years, and we know what we're doing. So it's going to take you a while to figure it out.
Right.
It was a lot of trial and error, and our rule here is we don't want to make anything that we're not willing to feed ourselves. So it took a while to do it right, but
literally humans eating it, like when you said ourselves, you mean your dogs or yourself?
Oh, well, you could eat it. Yeah, it'd be no issue. I think it's great earthquake food. Not the most appetizing for humans, but keep it around. It's got a good shelf life. If the big one hits, you'll be good for a couple of years. To clarify, it's we don't want to make anything that we're not willing to feed dogs ourselves. And we succeeded. I mean, we call it the first innovation in since the first kibble in 1958. I mean, from a product standpoint, that was an innovation. Wasn't great from a health standpoint, but ours is the first. Ever since then, it's basically the same stuff, just different brand names. Ours is the first different dog food.
And for those who missed previous shows that I've done with Dr. Karen Becker, Rodney Habib, and the other gentleman, I can't think of their name, and I'm so sorry, about kibble. The reason that we feed dogs kibble is because around World War II, there was a great demand for tin and metals for the war. And they looked at wet dog food, which was always what they were. I mean, wet dog foods were basically beef, pork, byproducts, cooked. They were gross and nasty looking, but they were put in a can. They had high shelf life because they were in a can. And when the demand for tin and other metals arose, well, people were like, oh, these are dogs. Like, well, what are we wasting all this money on tin and metal for these dogs? And around that time, I want to say it's the guy who started Science Diet, but I could be wrong. I could be misstating that, and maybe you can correct me. He determined that by putting corn and grains and some meat and some fat and making kind of like a slurry out of it, and then spitting it out into little chunks or pellets, and then putting it in a kiln and cooking at this ridiculous high heat that removed all moisture from it, made a no can needed, shelf stable for like 3 or 4 years dog food. And people are like, this is good enough for dogs. But it really wasn't. It was horrible for them. It actually destroys their kidneys. And so was that synopsis kind of on the money?
Yeah. I'm not an expert on it. I think it was 56 was the first extruded dog food product. I can't verify it was the Hill Science guy, but that, you could convince me.
Yeah. So kibble has really always been bad for your dog. And kibble destroys the dog's kidneys because it's dry and it literally leaches and makes them dehydrated all the time. But more importantly, it's so high in carbohydrates that it makes their blood sugar rise. And just like their human owners who eat nothing but carbs, I see people at breakfast places having pancakes, potatoes, 1 egg, because eggs are dangerous,
cholesterol, Carl.
Toast, a glass of orange juice, and like, oh yeah, that's a great breakfast. It's like, dude, you just ate like 250 grams of carbohydrates. And
yes. Side note, orange juice is the greatest marketing job in the history of mankind. It couldn't be a worse form of vitamin C, given the sugar content and that blocking absorption. But side note, that's amazing to me. Yeah.
And I remember my Aunt Rosie, when I was a kid, before I started in school, she used to babysit for my mother, and she had it stood on I want to say it was made by Hamilton Beach. It was a metal contraption that had a handle that you pulled down that pressed the orange into a spinning wheel, and you cranked it, and fresh orange juice came out. And we thought that was like, oh, that's cool. Really, the benefit is eating the orange, not drinking the juice.
Yeah. You're really removing. I mean, there is plenty of evidence that, eating a fruit, like a solid fruit, is not as bad in terms of glycemic effect because it's mixing with the fiber and the absorption rate is not as fast. But the juice, I mean, that's just purified shot straight to the liver. Like that's that's not what you want to be doing.
I want to take a break. And when we come back, I want to change the discussion slightly. And that is, your dog doesn't have to have cancer to feed them low carb. In fact, there's evidence that they will live longer and be healthier if you feed them low carb. And we're going to talk about that later in the show. If you do want to check out Visionary products, go to visionarypet.com, VISIONARY pet.com. The kibble is fairly inexpensive. It is low carb. It's made with real animal protein. It's a high quality product, again, that evolved from saving dogs' lives at the Kennel Pet Sanctuary. Where else is it available if people don't want to go to your website to buy it?
Yeah, it's very, very easy to get it. So visionarypet.com is the website. Chewy.com, you just search Visionary or type the word keto in. There's no other keto pet foods. So if you type keto into any search bar, you'll find us. Amazon as well. So those three. And then on our website, you can see retail locations. That's one thing we really want to focus on the next year or two is expanding retail footprint just to make it easy for everybody. But yeah, online right now, Visionary Pet, Chewy, or Amazon.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about healthy dogs and why they should be eating low carb. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Patrick Wardell. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Money. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Inside Tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Welcome back. We're talking about low-carb diets for dogs. In the beginning of the show, we're talking about dogs with cancer and other disorders and how low-carb diets affect them. But let's say you have a healthy dog. Wouldn't you want to keep your dog healthy? There is evidence that not just a low-carb... So extrinsically, when we talk about feeding dogs raw, we did a show years ago with Peter Rouse from New Zealand about feeding your dogs raw. I mean raw. People said, well, what about raw chicken? If it's not cooked, you can feed it to them. No one is trying to pull bones out of wolves or wild dogs or coyotes or even foxes' throats because they're eating raw chicken. They're not cooking it and bones splinter. But we did a show about eating raw, and we had so many people switch their dogs to raw, and they told us that their dogs got leaner, their coats got better, they loved raw food, and obviously there's a transition. We're going to talk about that. But when we talk about raw food for pets today, we are extrinsically talking about a low-carb diet because, again, we're not feeding them. I mean, maybe you're feeding them a little raw kale, but that's not the bulk of their diet. So talk about the effects of low carb on a dog's longevity and health when a dog starts out healthy.
Yeah, it's very similar to humans in the sense that when you eat this standard American diet, your blood glucose is constantly elevated. You're constantly getting insulin. When you look at life extension data, the one thing that really tracks above anything else is insulin sensitivity. When you keep that in a healthy range, people tend to live longer. They tend to have less adverse sort of chronic illnesses, things like that. A lot of these sort of general issues, whether it be autoimmune issues that are kind of sort of the backbone for a lot of these chronic illnesses, or insulin sensitivity even being the backbone for one of the most popular chronic illnesses, which is diabetes, right? It's the same thing for dogs. When we talk about raw, I do think you're right. I think a lot of the benefit is because if you switch from a cooked kibble to like a standard kibble to a raw diet, it's going to be very difficult for you to feed a raw diet that's 30% plus carbohydrates, right? You're going to end up feeding the dog mostly meat and in essence feeding them a low carb diet. You're also avoiding a lot of the issues we talked about before the break, which was heating up carbs, heating up mono and polyunsaturated fats. So that was one of the challenges with making our dry food as well, right? Because we want to provide the same kind of nutritional quality that you get from feeding our raw products, right? But we want to do it in a much cheaper way so everybody can afford it and it's easy. Everybody's used to just pouring it out of the bag and doing it, right? So that, I mean, the big component here, we haven't even really talked about ketones. There is, if you want to look up, all the amazing benefits of ketones as an alternative fuel source and what they can do circulating through your body, there is plenty of evidence that having a significant amount of circulating ketones in your bloodstream is a healthy thing to do. And that was one of the questions we answered with KetoPet actually was, could you put a dog into ketosis? That wasn't really known before we did that, but we were measuring blood sugar, we were measuring blood ketones, and we saw that you really could. The values end up being a little lower than humans, but you can give a dog those same benefits in terms of lower blood sugar and raised significant ketone levels that you can do in humans. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for that really to one-to-one crossover because I think the days of low carb and keto in humans, they're here. Like there are very few people now that will tell you, no. If you want to be healthy, you got to eat a lot of carbs and keep your blood sugar high. Like nobody's arguing for that anymore, right? We've already won that battle in humans. And it just takes a long time to kind of transfer that to dogs because people don't really think about canine nutrition all that much. And they kind of just, get used to buying the thing that they've always bought and, no fault against them, but
it's funny.
It's a worthy mission to change their minds.
I want to talk about this because this is an odd nuance. I know people who love their dogs, but when the inconvenience factor reaches a certain level, love loses. I see it with I know somebody who loves her dog. She used to train service dogs and she got to keep one of them. And when I've been telling her to feed raw forever, and she is feeding some raw, but she's still cooking the meat, I think. And it's like, look, I understand you personally don't want to eat raw meat. And so you can't get past that. But and to you, that's a big inconvenience, like, oh, raw meat. But your dog was built to eat raw meat. Yeah. Humans have hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary history eating cooked foods, right? At least 100,000. You'll have to ask the anthropologist here in the room. But dogs don't have that. They never had a period where they learned to make fire. So that's why they do so well on raw meat. Right. So, and that comes full circle to the argument about wild dogs versus domesticated dogs. Domesticated dogs can become feral dogs very easily. There's this notion that, and it could be true. Maybe your dog is 14, 15 years old and never had to do anything but walk over to the bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But if given the opportunity, they can figure out how to catch a squirrel. They chase squirrels now. They don't know why they chase them because they don't finish the act. But back in the day, they used to chase them and eat them.
Yeah, they still have those innate instincts. And it's really interesting. There's some really interesting studies on macronutrient self-selection in dogs. We talked to a guy from New Zealand. His name was Mark. I forget his last name. But he did his PhD on this, and it was basically, he was using closer to ancestral. So like, huskies and kind of wolf-like dogs, right? If you got some really, really domesticated dogs that have been food motivated all down their lineage, they'll pretty much eat, they'll eat anything. Like my brother's pug is not self-selecting too much, right? But if you get dogs that are closer to ancestral wolves, they will self-select. And he would put bulls out, fat, protein, carbs, and he would notice that they would pretty much always eat a diet that was 5% or less carbohydrates, and then mix up the other two in a ketogenic ratio. So it was really fascinating. Like the data was very compelling in that study. So that's what they prefer to eat. I think they kind of innately know what's best, because if you think about a dog in the wild who has a fresh kill, right? That's exactly what they're going for. They're not eating the grass next to the body. They're eating the meat and the sinews and
And I sent you a video from TikTok about a French bulldog living with wolves and just aggressive as the wolves.
Yeah. It is funny how you can bring those innate instincts. It's sort of like my childhood dog growing up was a rat terrier. Like he was a rat terrier mutt, and he was like a sweet dog, but the second he saw something that looked like a rat, it was a switch flipped, right? He was gone. But yeah, it's really interesting. To get back to your original question, it's just that it's kind of odd to be arguing for the sake of low carb, right? Because I think the onus really should be on, okay, dogs have no nutritional need for carbs. You're telling me they do. Carb manufacturer, can you back that up? And there's really no evidence or science or anything to back that up, right? Whereas on my side of the argument, I have scrolls of research studies in humans, some in dogs, a lot in humans, and there's a lot of what we've done in dogs that demonstrates that a lot of those biochemical aspects transfer over.
Talk about transitioning your dog from kibble to even the kibble that Visionary provides. Should it be 50-50 to get the microbiome and the digestive processes acclimated?
Sure. It's pretty bizarre. Every dog is totally unique. So we always recommend like a standard transition time. So over, 10 to 14 days, gradually replacing old with new. And I think that's the best way to do it just for digestion issues. Because when dogs when they're eating high carb diets, you're storing a lot of water. And when you're losing that glycogen, it's pulling a lot of water into the digestive tract. So that can be an issue with the transition. And that's why we always recommend, a standard 10 to 14 day protocol, maybe longer if your dog's had issues with transitioning in the past.
But so what are the ratios? Okay. Day 1 through 5, 50% the new food, 50%.
I would start less. I would do 25-75 for a few days, then 50-50, and you can kind of work your way up. Everybody, it's a bit of a nuanced process. It's more of an art than a science, transitioning a dog's diet. Some dogs have no issues, and some pet parents don't want. The only issue with transitioning is then you have this period where the dog is essentially eating a diet that is high in carbs and high in fat. And I don't want that to last too long. It's not that much of an issue acutely, you know what I mean? But that's why I don't say transition over the period of a month. But yeah, 25-75 for a period, then 50-50, then 75-25. And then when you're ready, you can go to 100, and you can speed it up based on how your dog's doing. If there's no issues, then that's if there's no issues on the first few days, it's probably a good sign, and you can go a little faster.
I never realized until you just said it that the reason for so some dogs when they switch to raw, they have diarrhea.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now I understand it's osmotic diarrhea because they're losing water and it's going into their intestines, and it's just taking the normal poop that they would make and making it watery. And people are like, oh, he can't do this. He's got watery diarrhea now. This doesn't agree with them. No, it does agree with them. Give them some time to lose the water.
Yeah, it's the same thing for humans. I mean, humans have the exact same thing, and that's why people will drink a lot more water when they switch to a ketogenic diet. It's why people will salt their food a lot and buy keto mineral supplements, right? Because you're losing a lot of water. That pulls some minerals with it. We haven't seen that much be an issue for dogs. Our food is fortified. It has like minorly fortified. It has most of the vitamins and minerals it needs through the food. But yeah, it's the exact same mechanism in humans and dogs that's
You
causing
have
that.
any evidence about longevity in low carb dogs that started out healthy and have done it? You've got a lot of people who have been using this food for a while now, right?
Yeah, we would need to be farther out from it. That's something that's really like truly interesting to me is looking at this first generation. This really is the first generation. I mean, there wasn't, there's raw fed dogs and there's things like that. There hasn't really been a formal study on it. I will say, there's been some people who have made it their goal to have the longest living dog, to have the record for that.
Right.
And they pretty much all feed raw, low carb diets.
Right.
I don't think there's one that doesn't. They all feed raw meat, right? So there's that kind of anecdotal aspect. But in terms of a formal, like longitudinal study here, that doesn't really exist. But in my personal experience, because cancer is the thing that tends to kill dogs, and because, when we have, you can look at my inbox. I have dozens of people every day contact me. Hey, my dog has late stage cancer. Hey, my dog has late stage cancer. What can I do? And it's always like, they switch to the diet, and oftentimes it'll give them an extra year or two past the prognosis date, right?
Right.
So if you can kind of push that back and get the dog on a low carb diet before the cancer develops,
Right.
I mean, it is hard for a tumor to metastasize. Like, it is a very, very difficult thing for a tumor to separate, go through the bloodstream. Now it's got to get out of the bloodstream, form a new colony, make a new blood supply. Like cancer metastasis is a very difficult, low percentage thing, which is great, right? But it does happen. But if you can really limit the sugar, the blood sugar that can create fuel for that new metastasis, like I think you're going to be preventing a lot of late stage cancer, and you're going to be extending lives significantly. Especially because 1 to 2 years as a percentage of a dog's expected life is a lot more significant compared to a human, right? I mean, we're talking like a large percentage
Right.
in most cases.
I remember seeing over the years people post pictures of various dogs that were like 19, 20 years old that looked young, and them claiming that they fed a raw diet their entire life.
Yeah.
And again, when you see people posting stuff about feeding their pet a raw diet, what you must also hear is a low carb diet, because there's no way for them to feed those dogs high amounts of carbohydrates, because there's only a certain number of things that are unprocessed that a dog will eat that are considered carbohydrates. Like, they'll eat rice if it's cooked. They can't eat rice if it's raw. They can't eat, corn if it's raw. They'll eat kale, they'll eat grasses and stuff like that. But you're inherently feeding a dog a low carbohydrate diet when you're feeding them a raw diet. And those are the dogs that seem to live to be 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And they look youthful. They're playing, they're jumping.
Yeah, I'm sure there is the Keith Richards of dogs that, ate trash and did all the drugs in the world and lived to be 16. I'm sure that dog exists. Some of them it just happens that way, right? But you're absolutely right. In the vast majority of cases, it is a low carb diet. And that's a really interesting point you're making about there's a lot of pride in raw diets. It'd be great to see that same kind of pride in the actual driving factor, right? Which is, the raw aspect is important, but the low carb aspect is more important, in my opinion. And I think the science will be on my side there.
Yeah, it's like somebody bragging about eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and talking about, oh, the peanut butter was so good and the jelly was so delicious, but ignoring the fact that there's bread in it too, right? It's like, you can't eat the peanut butter and jelly sandwich without eating bread as well. You can't feed your dog a raw diet without feeding your dog low carb.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a worse metaphor. It's like a capsule that makes you live longer, and you're, giving all the credit to the gelatin surrounding it.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to take another commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Big Kibble. We're going to talk about the big companies and the veterinarians that drive the reason you feed your dog foods that are killing them faster. But before we do that, we want to give you a solution, and that is Visionary Pet Food. Smart dogs eat low carb. Go to Visionary Pet, VISION, visionaryspet.com, and learn more. We'll also talk about the various foods that are available at the Visionary Pet when we come back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. You've heard us talk about the power of copper peptides here on the show. Now try it yourself with Restoracell's amazing new skincare line built on the power of blue copper peptides. All natural, organic, made in the USA, and safe for sensitive skin. Save 30% on their Stem Cell Awakening Serum. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Restoracell. That's RESTORACELL and use code SHR to save 30% off. Remodel your skin today. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. Money. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. If you love your dog, and I don't know anybody who doesn't love their dog, then this is a really important message. It's time for you to step up and be the guardian that you chose to be. Your dog didn't show up on your doorstep and say, hey, will you take care of me? You went out looking for your dog. You put a lot of thought into shopping for your dog. You probably have all sorts of great things for your dog around the house. You love your dog. Maybe the dog sleeps in bed with you. You treat the dog like a human. And that means that you have chosen to be the steward for that dog. And you are feeding your dog off-the-shelf kibble. You are sincerely, I mean, I'm not trying to be an alarmist here. You are slowly killing your dog. You're setting your dog up to get diseases. If you've had a lab or what's the other one? Golden Retriever. Yeah, and your dog has died of cancer. Know that without realizing it, because you have been informed by people who don't care about your dog, that you have contributed to the onset of that disease. And I know right now, some of you just want to tune out and say, F you, Carl. but it's the truth. You didn't do it on purpose because the vet's telling you, and Big Kibble has got the ads if you care about your dog, and but they're lying to you just like they've lied to us about human food for the past 50 years. So now you cannot unring a bell. If these messages have fallen upon your ears, you have a choice to make. And you should say it out loud. Say it to your dog. Look at your dog and say, I love you and care enough to figure out how to change what I'm feeding you. Or I love you and care, but it's just too much of an inconvenience for me to save you and care for you like the guardian I chose to be over you. Because those are the only two options at this point in time, because these are facts we're talking about here. So where does Big Kibble stand right now? They've got to be seeing this groundswell, this information. Are the big chow companies, Purina Chow and this chow, are they starting to go, okay, the cat is out of the bag. People know that we're killing their dogs with this crappy food, but it's just more profitable than giving them good food?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I definitely have seen sort of the beginnings of a sea change. When we first started this, I mean, veterinarians are amazing, right? I totally respect them. Hopefully this doesn't come off as anything not that. But they don't get much nutrition training in veterinarian school.
Like human doctors either, right?
Yeah. There's too many things. It's never really set up in the protocol. It's more about addressing problems once they're already there. It's just like human nutrition and human medicine, where it's less preventative. You don't ever really see your doctor until there's a problem, right? I don't go in for checkups. I don't know who does. People have busy lives. They have things to do. It's like you really only see a doctor and you really only see a vet when there's a problem, right? I think that's a bad frame, but that's sort of a broader discussion. But that really feeds into the nutrition component. Is the authority figures are not really authorities, I guess, on the nutrition component, right? The other thing is that those big kibble companies, the Marses, the Purinas of the world, they do a lot to get their hooks into vet schools, and they fund and donate to a lot of vet schools, the science diets, the prescription diets, the things like that. I remember being horrified. I remember a couple of years ago, we looked at the prescription diet. It was a diabetes prescription diet, and it was like 40% plus super easily digestible carbohydrates. And I'm just sitting here like, what is going on, right? So, I'm not somebody who believes in a global cabal. Right. I think especially with everyday people who want to feed their dogs, like, you have enough to worry about in your life to take the time to do a deep dive into nutrition, especially a field where there's so many conflicting voices and so much complex information. It's the same thing with human nutrition, right? So, but back to what I started with, there is the beginning of a sea change, right? When we first started, not many vets would talk to us. Now we have vets reaching out constantly, asking us questions, asking us, what's the best way to recommend this to clients? Can we get some in the clinic? We have a lot of vets that buy our food wholesale. Like it's very interesting. And that is really sort of the first piece of evidence. I think it's going to be a long time until a major sort of top tier dog food company, I don't think the Walmart brand is going to go low carb anytime soon, right? But all of these retailers are starting to see the low carb keto space move in human products, and I think dog food will follow that. Hopefully there will become some very real profit incentives, and that will sort of drive much needed nutritional change. But in the meantime, we'll keep doing what we're doing and trying to push the message.
So talk about the various offerings that Visionary has and why someone would select one over another.
Yeah, so we have basically something for everyone. It's all low carb. Everything we make is less than 1% digestible carbs. Everything we make has a ketogenic ratio in terms of fat and protein. We have the frozen food for the raw feeders. That's available on Chewy.com because it ships frozen and they're experts at that. We have the freeze-dried food that's available on visionarypet.com, Amazon, and Chewy, and petco.com as well. And that's another good raw option. A lot of people like to use freeze-dried. Those products are great. They're a little more expensive, but for smaller dogs, they can be wonderful options, right? And then we have the dry food, which is really, I think, the easiest, most affordable option for all dogs. You can actually afford that for a 100-pound dog, which was a giant step for us, because we were fighting that battle for many years before we launched the dry food. So that, again, is available everywhere: visionarypet.com, chewy.com, amazon.com, and petco.com.
So talk about that price plateau. So if you're buying Science Diet kibble,
Mhm.
how does that compare to your dry food price-wise?
Ours is definitely more expensive. It ends up being very affordable in terms of everyday feeding. There's one component that's a little more difficult to explain to people, but I think is important from a cost perspective, and that's because our food is very high fat, and fat has over twice as many calories per gram, right? So in terms of cost per calorie, which I think is the more important thing, you need to feed your dog a set amount of calories per day for it to maintain healthy body weight, right? The cost to buy those calories ends up being pretty equivalent in terms of our food and very cheap kibbles, because those kibbles are made of carbs, and carbs has 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram. Our food is high in fat, very low in carbs, has more calories, in terms of density. 1 cup of our kibble is going to have a lot more calories, and that means the bag goes a lot farther. Without any issues on satiety, the dogs are going to feel more full and satisfied.
But I was going to ask you, because
with less
when
food.
people eat more fat, they
Mhm.
find it more satiating. They eat less food throughout the day, so that same phenomenon crosses over to canines.
Yeah, and it's the fat and protein component. I mean, if you can look at animal model after animal model, the real component of satiety, fat helps, but it is certain amino acids. Like, there are various animal models that have proven this point, which is that really the most important sensor in terms of I've eaten enough, I don't have to eat anymore, is when you reach the certain amount of certain amino acids. So it really is protein intake.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I was just thinking, has any one person contributed more to the low carbohydrate snack and food category than Ron Penna?
I don't think so.
And I don't know. Well, no,
Maybe
I think
Atkins.
Atkins. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. I said, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Atkins. I don't think anybody on this planet has done more to both envision and enable people to feel like they're not doing without and still continue to eat low carbohydrate from the inception of Quest and now Legendary, Visionary. I mean, it's just I think we need to. I'm going to call the Pope later and see if we can have a patron saint of low carb and make it Ron Penna.
I think that's a good idea, and I think it'll be an easy voting.
This is fascinating. I'm supposed to have another guest. I'm supposed to have Will from White Oak Pastures, but he should have been online already, and I don't see him here, so I'm kind of worried.
Do you want me to talk about regenerative farming?
Yeah, why don't you? You're big on regenerative farming, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the topic, but I've done a little bit of research. I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of soil quality being very important, especially from a greenhouse gas standpoint. It is very important to have the animals living on the soil, move them around, fluctuate them constantly.
So look at this number. This is fascinating. I'm going to put this up because I had this slide for his interview.
Mhm.
So conventional beef has a plus 33 total emissions per pound of product. White Oak Pastures has a negative 3.5, which means, oh, here comes Will now. We're actually talking about it, and Will just popped on.
Nice.
But yeah, we're going to talk about this in a minute because this is fascinating, especially when you combine it with the fact that we are being lied to by the media every day. Americans don't eat more red meat than fruit or vegetables or dairy.
Mhm.
In fact, I used to have a graph, and I didn't have the thoughtfulness to tell Natalie to put it up for today's show. But I have a graph of what Americans really eat, and it's like, this is red meat, this is fruit, this is vegetables, and this is dairy, and we're being lied to that we eat
processed carbs as well. You're so true, because you go, oh, did you eat meat today? But when they talk about meat, it's not a steak. What they're talking about is this flimsy little burger patty with this giant bun and lettuce and tomato and pickles and onions and French fries and soda. That's their vision of I ate meat today, right?
Yeah.
The meat is a tiny component of that diet. Yeah.
It's terrible. We're not only being lied to about how much meat people are eating, but we're also being lied to that raising cattle must be something that's bad for the planet. And Will Harris is going to join us now when we take this break and set people straight. And if you're a farmer, you may want to reach out to Will because he can fix your problem real fast. Listen, Patrick, I want to thank you for being here one more time. Quick shout out. VisionaryPet.com, VisionaryPet.com. Go check it out if you have a dog that you love and you want to stop killing your dog slowly. Who did that song? Killing Me Slowly with this song. But was it Carly Simon? Was it Carly Simon?
Who did Killing Me Softly? I mean, Lauryn Hill had the famous cover.
Yeah, I liked it. I like Lauryn Hill's version. But anyway, if you want to stop killing your dog slowly, get with Visionary Pet Food. Feed your dog low carb and change the trajectory of their life. Really, really be a steward for them. We're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we will have Will Harris with us. Patrick, take care, brother. And don't forget to look at Patrick's amazing pet dog facts on TikTok. Check us out, TikTok. Visionary Pet. Here's a white lab coat and everything. All right, we'll see you later, brother.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break. Stay with me. We'll be right back. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that. Do this. Avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Money. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. You've heard us talk about the power of copper peptides here on the show. Now try it yourself with RestoraCell's amazing new skincare line built on the power of blue copper peptides. All natural, organic, made in the USA, and safe for sensitive skin. Save 30% on their Stem Cell Awakening Serum. Go to shrnetwork.biz/RestoraCell. That's RestoraCell and use code SHR to save 30% off. Remodel your skin today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We are joined by Will Harris. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Carl. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm wonderful because I have White Oak Pastures meat to eat. That's why.
Good.
So, you know, Will, the beef category has become very competitive over the past decade. And there's lots of reasons that people are being told that they should buy this product or that product. But I want to talk about something that might be the most important. Your beef is delicious. Your prices are competitive with anything else you can find on the internet. But there's one thing that you bring to the party that actually could help us. It can help us shed the stigma of eating beef because, today it's all about the cancel culture. Oh, you eat beef, you're bad. But the reality is that patronizing White Oak Pastures is a shot for responsible beef production. And people can eat White Oak Pasture products, and it's more than just beef, but we have to focus on beef to get the ball rolling here and be confident that they can actually tell people, well, no, I eat White Oak Pasture beef. Here's what it does. Here's what it really does to the planet. Isn't that now a more important argument than just the quality and price of beef?
It absolutely is, Carl. I appreciate you bringing that up first. We have been told for a decade that beef is bad for you, beef is bad for the environment. And let's just focus on the environment here, because I think we've got, in our case, on my farm, we've got crystal clear scientific evidence that is not the case. Again, for the last decade, there's been this supercharged initiative to demean beef as a environmentally damaging production system. And it is not correct. It is not beef production. It is the way we had previously produced beef. Now, I will join that argument that there's a lot wrong with that.
Right.
But on my farm, we have a scientific study called the LCA, Life Cycle Assessment, done by a third-party environmental engineering group from Minneapolis. They came down and proved that we actually sequester 3.5 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent for every pound of beef we produce. And I was very glad when we had a customer offer to pay for that very expensive study. I couldn't afford to do that. Not that they told me anything we didn't know. I knew we were sequestering carbon. The land has changed colors. It has gone from red to very dark, almost black. That's carbon. Mm-hmm. But I did not have the scientific validation, nor could I quantify it. I just knew it was happening.
Right. So I'm going to put a graph up. I actually started talking about it and waiting for you to come on, but I'm going to ask you to kind of explain this graph. Can you see it okay?
Yes, sir.
So what is this graph? What are we looking at here, Will?
You're looking at the graphic evidence of the life cycle assessment that I was referencing previously. They refer to life cycle analysis. I've heard it called both ways. This was done by an environmental engineering group called Quantis from Minneapolis. They came here. It was a $80,000 study. Customer volunteered to have this done to see if we were doing what we said we were doing. And they actually took soil samples at depths up to 1 meter and they worked our administration people to death, providing the invoices, how much diesel fuel we bought, how much electricity we bought, how much everything that we bought. Punched it all into their program and found the numbers that I gave you earlier. With the negative 3.5 at the bottom is negative 3.5 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent that we sequester for every pound of beef, grass-fed beef that we sell. And I'll call your attention to the fact that we don't apply carbon to the soil. That carbon, that negative 3.5 pounds of carbon, was previously greenhouse gases. It's the gases that our carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, whatever else, that our pasture grasses brought down, breathed in during photosynthesis, pumped it down into the ground in the form of roots, and of course the cows ate it, and they defecated. But they locked that 3.5 pounds of carbon down of every pound produced. Now what science is focused on is the fact that while my cattle were digesting that cellulose, that grass, but there was flatulence. They were putting some greenhouse gases back up. But all of that carbon was previous greenhouse gas, and 3.5 pounds of it got locked into the soil.
And I want to point out to people that are looking at this graph. So, you have conventional beef on the top, you have pork, you have chicken, but you have the supposed new alternatives to beef that everybody, including Bill Gates, wants us to start eating. And compared to White Oak Pastures, they produce +4 and +3.5 respectively for Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger. Hell, soybean is a +2. So the argument that growing foods is somehow, somehow better, well, that's just a lie when you compare it to White Oak Pastures products.
It is, and I call your attention to the fact that the life cycle assessment that was done by Qantas is the same environmental engineers that did the life cycle assessment for Impossible Burger. And I actually invited the CEO of Impossible Burger to come down and let me show him what we're doing. And we actually went into a dialogue. He went silent on me. And then later, Mr. Gates has been so vocal about the damages of regenerative agriculture. That's odd to me. The damages of regenerative agriculture. That's an oxymoron. But I invited him and he didn't respond. But I would love to have these people down, and I don't want to get them down here and fuss at them. I would like to demonstrate to them, this is what we do. We've been doing it for a long time, 25 years. This is the results we've had. Please don't blaspheme this production system. Blaspheme some of those others that had positive carbon footprints. Don't blaspheme this one.
Right. But you and I both know that their issue isn't what's good for the planet. Their issue is taking control of what people eat. That's really what it is. So they love to use the word sustainable. In fact, I had a scientist from the UK on a 3 weeks ago talking about it's high glycemic carbohydrates that are driving heart disease, not red meat. But he had to, when we talked about it, he kept saying, but of course, I'm for sustainability. So what he was saying was, I'm really not for red meat because that's politically correct for him to say. What do you really think? If you had a guess, I know you've got lots of oxmology, they call it out in the country, or wisdom. What do you really think? Why are people being lied to about how much beef Americans eat and how harmful beef is to the planet? What's the real reason, you think?
Well, I think you'd have to follow the money, because I can only speculate. I don't have any hard evidence of these things, but it is incredible how I consider the evidence that's being shown that beef is destroying the planet when it's produced the way we do it to be junk science. And it's incredible to me how rapidly this junk science has become so pervasive. Virtually anybody that, unless they have hands-on experience like us or stands near someone with hands-on experience, believes that beef production is bad for the environment. And the fact is, it couldn't be further from the truth. Please just think about how the earth evolved. Let's go. Modern beef production has been going on for 75 years. Ruminants have been roaming the face of the earth since a long time ago.
The beginning of time, right?
I think so. So, the way the earth evolved, I'm talking about the most productive lands on the planet, the Serengeti Plains in Africa, the Great Plains of the United States, even the tundra. It was by large herds of ruminants, whether it was buffalo here or wildebeest and gazelles in Africa and caribou in the tundra, being slowly chased across the landscape by predators, whether it be timber wolves or polar bears or lions.
Right.
And that effect was that perennial grasses were really impacted very hard by these herds. You know, these prey animals, these ruminants, protect themselves by bunching together. That's their defense. And the predators were slowly chasing them across the landscape. So they would go across a piece of ground, piece of land, and really hammer it hard, eat everything out there. A lot of cloven hoof activity, opening up the soil, a lot of urination, a lot of defecation. But then they may not make it back to that piece of ground for a month or a year or a decade, depending on circumstances and environment, ecosystem. And that is the way we built these wonderful soils. I would suggest that, no, I wouldn't suggest, I will tell you as a person who's done it, that the only cost-effective way to regenerate a degraded soil is using animal impact.
Interesting.
You just can't cost-effectively do it otherwise. Mr. Gates might spread $10,000 worth of compost an acre on his 250,000 acres of land, but the rest of us can't do that. We have got to rely on the cycles of nature to regenerate the soil. The cycles that built it are the only way to cost effectively regenerate it. And ruminants are not only, ruminants are a necessary part of that system. It's the way it evolved. You can't take an ingredient out and have the same effect. And ruminants were part of that recipe for building these wonderful soils in the world.
You know what's funny? Just for giggles, I Googled the population of deer in the United States, and there's over 42 million deer estimated right now, because you know their populations ebb and flow with seasons and so on. 42 million deer in the United States right now. And then I said, how many cows in the United States? It's 94 million cows. But let's be clear about something. Hunters harvest a very small number of deer. In fact, sometimes deer overrun land and destroy it. Those cattle, most likely, if they're not milking cows, they're beef producing cows. And they have maybe what, 4 years lifespan, 5-year lifespan, a beef producer?
A slaughter calf in my program will be about 2 years. An industrial program will be about 18 months. The brood animals, may live 12, 15 years.
Right.
The normal life expectancy of an animal is about 24 years. You just let it grow up and die.
But my point is, those cows are probably turning over. So you have a cow replacing a cow. That number is most likely static. But the number of deers fluctuates depending on, like I said, the seasons and the availability of food and how bad the winter was. So you have half as many deer at any given time in the United States alone as you do cows. I don't see anybody complaining about deer destroying the planet. I mean, destroying the planet. They ought to, but here in the United States, there's other things happening here So I have a theory that government likes to put people into tribes and make us fight with each other. So we're too busy fighting with each other to pay attention to the underhanded things that they're doing to us. And this is really what I think it is. And they know that we are going to fight for our beef and the vegans are going to fight against beef. And that's the only reason why they're picking on it. Because as I said earlier in the previous interview, Natalie had an image that we used in Casual Friday that shows what Americans really eat. And the segment of red meat was this big. And the segment of vegetables was this big. Fruits was this big. And dairy we eat more fruits, vegetables, and dairy than beef. So it's a complete lie that we have to get rid of red meat. Getting rid of red meat won't impact anything at all. If anything, from what you're telling us, it will decrease sustainability of agriculture, not increase sustainability.
It would decrease the sustainability. If ruminants were all raised without confinement feeding of high carbohydrate diet, which is the way we have evolved to nearly 100% of the production over the last 80 years, then you would see a definite change. You know, I can literally document it here on my farm. I have a soil sample that I can see from here of soil on my land, the soil, and the dirt from a neighbor's land. And it looks like it came from two different planets. It's the same soil type, same ecosystem, same. The only difference is mine has been managed with maximum animal impact over the last 20, 25 years.
So what I'm saying to my audience today is this. If beef quality and flavor is the same, which I'm telling you that White Oak Pastures beef is so delicious. It's so good. It has the right amount of fat. It has the right, it's just perfect. But let's just say I'm exaggerating. So if beef quality and taste is the same, if beef price is the same, and you are someone who is conscientious, you're saying, you know, I think anything we can do to help the planet is a good idea. How can you not buy beef from White Oak Pastures? Because they're doing it right. They're doing it the way all the farms should do it. I don't know, some are, some aren't, but we know that White Oak is, and they have a special offering to my audience. If you go to the link, shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak, you can save 20% off using the code SHR20. Give them a try. Not only will you enjoy the flavor and the experience, but you'll sleep better that night, I predict, because your conscience will be clear. When a vegan attacks you for eating beef, you say, the beef I eat is better for the planet than the soy you eat. And you can show them these numbers. I'm going to put this up again. So later on in the show, if you want to screenshot this, you can show them Impossible Burger, Beyond Burger, soybean, and White Oak. White Oak is better for the planet than the Impossible Burger, the Beyond Burger, or soybean when it comes to greenhouse gases. Check this out. Oh, here, Natalie put this up. This is what Americans are eating. This. Let's see if I can get it to. There you go. There's red meat up at the 12 o'clock. 110 pounds a year. Now look at fruits, 273 pounds a year. Look at vegetables, 415 pounds a year. Look at sugar, 141 pounds a year. Look at dairy. I mean, we're being lied to. And the problem today, and Joel Green and I covered this yesterday, that tribalism has replaced critical thinking. It's more important for you to repeat the lie so that you can support your tribe than it is to tell the truth. That's what's taking place today. This is why we have fact-resistant human beings today. This is why. Here, Natalie put something else up here. Let's see what this is. Oh, yeah. I love it. And it comes wrapped just like from a butcher. I know. It's beautiful. Thanks for putting that up, Natalie. So folks, don't continue to propagate the lie and eat White Oak Pastures beef and have a clean conscience and be able to tell a vegan, I'm doing more for the planet than you are. Here, I'll show you. I'll prove it to you. I think it's brilliant.
Carl, if it's helpful, that graphic or one very similar regarding our life cycle assessment compared to the others is on our website.
Is it this one here?
One similar to that. It shows the same information.
Okay.
But it's available on our website, which is whiteoakpastures.com in the land stewardship section. And also you can double click on it and actually go to the life cycle assessment and learn more about the technical side of how it was done, if that is something you're interested in.
So the actual data from the research, that's exciting.
Yes, sir.
That's exciting. Yeah, you know what? There's no reason to eat anybody else's beef than White Oak Pastures. There just isn't, because it tastes great, it's priced right, and you are actually supporting the planet, really supporting it, not like these other people say they are when they're lying. Don't be a fact-resistant human. And let's see, I want to make sure that we covered everything I want to cover. Is there anything that we missed, Will, that you want to talk about?
Well, I'd like to expand on the point you made about how incredibly rapidly and thoroughly the lie about beef destroying the earth has permeated throughout our society. Virtually everybody's heard it, and many people believe it, probably most people. And it's interesting to me that has manifested itself into this very effective campaign, Meatless Monday. Pretty much everybody's heard of Meatless Monday. Now, compare red meat produced the way we do it to sugar. Sugar is super highly subsidized by taxpayer dollars. The production of sugar is one of the most highly subsidized commodities. Sugar causes obesity. I think that's inarguable. People's great grandmama knew that. Sugar rots your teeth out. Sugar is responsible for a lot more clearing of rainforest, the production of sugar, than anything else I know. Sugar is particularly harmful to the environment. They burn those fields off, the smoke goes up before they harvest them. So compare sugar to red meat. We have Meatless Monday. Have you ever heard of Sugarless Sunday?
No, we should have one.
I hadn't either. But to me, it's very interesting how the negative bad science on beef became available to the mainstream, but all the negatives that we know intuitively or by research, nobody talks about that in the mainstream.
It's corruption. It's agenda-driven corruption, and everybody who has a brain and actually uses their brain knows it. If you're a tribalist, you listen to what your tribal leaders say and you repeat it, and you'll die before you admit that you were wrong. Aiden Ray just asked, what do you feed the cows at White Oak Pastures? I'm assuming that they're pasture fed, right?
They are. We do harvest forage in the form of hay to feed them during times when we may have slow pasture growth, be it dormant season or. Now, we don't have any droughts in my part of Georgia, but it can happen. But we do feed, it's all forage fed, hay or harvested forage, growing grass, or harvested forage like hay.
Now, I've heard the term silage used as it relates to corn stalks, and I've been told that corn stalks are actually considered a grass, not the corn itself, but the stalk and the leaves. Is that true?
Corn is a grass, and there's really nothing wrong with feeding corn fodder without the mature grain.
Right.
I don't do it, but I have friends who do. And as long as that corn is fed before the grain is mature, I think it's a perfectly acceptable feed. And I think it has all the positive impacts you'd want on the environment. To get maximum environmental benefit, perennial grasses are better. Perennials are come back year after year after year. Corn, while it is a grass, it's an annual grass, so it's not quite as good. I used to be on the board of the American Grass-Fed Association, and corn prior to the formation of the grain is an accepted feed for grass-fed cattle. After the grain is formed, it's not.
What about if the grain is harvested and you've just got those big yellow stalks drying out in the fields? Can they use that to feed the cows?
Theoretically, yes, but in a harvested cornfield, there will be a lot of mature grain that's harvest loss. Combine fields to pick it up. So no, the American Grass-Fed Association does not consider forage over harvested grain fields to be grass-fed.
Well, that's good. That shows a high level of ethics, in my humble opinion.
Some really good people worked on those standards for many years.
I want to put this up one more time. The website is obviously whiteoakpastures.com if you want to go straight there. If you want to get the deal, shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use the code SHR20. However you get there, you must patronize this company because they are doing it right and their prices are right. The product is fantastic. And they have other things that are available. Like I just got some, what kind of, they're not chickens. I want to say what they're called, like guinea. So tell me what guineas are. I have two of them from White Oak.
So guinea is my favorite poultry. It's originally from Africa, but somehow it's become really entrenched in French cuisine. Guinea gumbo, if you like Cajun food, which I do. We pasture raise 5 poultry species: chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, ducks. We have pastured eggs. We have 5 red meat species: cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits. We have certified organic vegetables and honey and a number of other things. And we raise all those species here on the farm. We have the slaughterhouse here on the farm for the red meat and the poultry, 2 separate entities. And then we do the internet order fulfillment to be picked up from the online store, to be picked up by FedEx or UPS. Everything's done here on the farm in Bluffton, Georgia.
And is it my imagination, do guineas have longer legs than domestic American chickens? Guineas
are still very feral. They're very similar to what you would find in the veld in Africa. They're not domesticated like as much as chickens are. So yes, they have longer legs. They have wings. They can fly. Oh. I love guineas. I love raising guineas. The hardest part of raising them is harvest them. You got to go in the middle of the night and very young, quick, slender men, people of which I am not one, snatch them off the perch.
Yeah, especially if they can fly. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. Listen, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for returning as a sponsor. I love your product, and I feel better about using your product, and I hope that my audience picks up on this, because there is no better producer out there that produces animal protein conscientiously and under 100% his control. So this is a big deal to me. Thanks for being here today, Will.
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy being with you.
Talk soon. And that's it for today. I'm actually off the air tomorrow. Got some work to do here at the studio to catch up on, but I'll be back on Monday. Hope you have a safe and wonderful weekend, and we'll see you soon.